In the heart of the city, a new story awakens, bringing urban culture to life. Inspire, entertain, and empower, sparking conversations and celebrate creativity. PowerVault Network. Live and learn.
Act like you. This is a fake bill from the gentleman.
The driver in there?
Which one?
The blue one over there.
All right. Let me see your hands.
Damn, man.
Stay in the car. Let me see your other hand.
I'm sorry.
Let me see your other hand.
Please, Mazal.
Both hands.
Do nothing.
Put your fucking hands up right now. Let me see your other hand.
All right. What I do though? What did we do?
Put your hand up there. Put your fucking hand up there. Jesus Christ. Keep your fucking hands on the wheel. Keep your fucking hands on the wheel.
Yes, sir. God dang, man. Man, I got shot the same way as I was before.
Okay, well, when I say let me see your hands, you put your fucking hands up.
Man, I'm so sorry, Mr. Officer.
You got them?
Man, dang, man.
Put your hands on top of your head.
Man, Mr. Officer.
What's your first name?
He's pretty good. George Floyd.
What is it?
He's a good guy. George Floyd, she said. All right, let me calm down now. It's feeling better now.
Keep walking.
Okay, do me one favor, man.
No, when we get to the car, let's get to the car, man.
Please, man. Don't leave me by myself, man, please. I'm just claustrophobic. That's it.
Well, you're still going in the car.
When I watched the video of George Floyd,
Don't do me like that, man. Please. Okay, can I talk to you, please?
Yes, you get in this car, we can talk.
I am claustrophobic.
what I saw was evil.
All right, man, please. No, I can't take that, man. I can't. I'm gonna lay on the ground. I'm gonna lay on the ground. I'm gonna lay on the ground.
It was reminiscent of a lynching.
Ah! 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 Ah!
But after that, we saw millions of people around the world take a stand with the Black Lives Matter movement, a global uprising against injustice.
Please, man. I can't fucking breathe.
Come on out.
Get you.
Because when police continually oppress and violate people's rights and abuse them and murder them, at some point, there is going to be an uprising when people have had enough.
It was like a flashpoint. The echo of that came like this groundswell of final truth, that actually understanding what the world looks like through our eyes.
I need you to understand. I'm paid for this shit.
There was clearly a shared sentiment amongst all of us, which was change has to happen.
2020 felt like a window of opportunity. One moment to challenge the status quo.
Former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin has been charged with murder.
But it led to a huge backlash across the world.
Attempting to challenge the status quo, there was always going to be discontent, because at that point, there's like large swathes of defensiveness and denial.
His report concluded that there is no proof of institutional racism.
And our country will be woke no longer.
Did the movement fail? What the hell happened? So on May 25th of 2020, Memorial Day, I was home with my family in Minneapolis, and I just happened to open Facebook, and I noticed there was a Black Lives Matter post which said that the police had choked someone to the point that they died. Normally in Minneapolis, people get shot and killed by the police, not having their throats crushed. So I was definitely curious about the situation. I'm a civil rights attorney and one of the spokespersons for the Black Lives Matter movement here in Minneapolis. So if people in the community had various issues, I would contact Chief Arredondo.
When I saw her number, I answered it.
Did Minneapolis police kill someone today? And he said, no, Miss Nakima.
We had a death, but I believe it was a medical-related death.
Well, that's not what the community is saying happened. People are saying the police choked this person. Have you seen video of the incident? And he said, no. I said, you need to see some video immediately.
When I saw that video, I wanted my eyes to not see what I was just seeing.
Please, I can breathe.
To see the life being essentially choked out of someone who kept saying, I can't breathe, was one of the most devastating things that I've witnessed.
Breaking news this morning, there's a man who is dead after an encounter with police. The video posted to Facebook shows an officer with his knee on his neck. We're not showing that video just yet. Want to make sure that man's family is fully notified.
I remember the television had a black guy laying on the ground.
Well, you got him down, man. Let him breathe, please, man. Let him breathe.
My heart was breaking for that dude. And my sister calls me. And that's when I realized that I was sitting back, looking at my nephew die.
A video showed an officer pressing his knee into the neck of the man who was later identified as George Floyd.
His favorite pastime was shooting hoop in the hood. You know, he's at the park right here now in the 5th Ward, balling. It just brings me back, man, to the days where we shoot ball and laugh. I was bigger than he was. But after 15 or 16, I still treated him like he was a little dude, but he was a little bit taller. George was my big sister's baby boy. I watched him grow from a little baby to a grown man. I love that dude a lot. I'm never gonna be able to look at his beautiful smile. He don't get to see his baby grow up. That day on May the 26th, that's when the world changed. That video played every second of the day, all over the world.
Minneapolis gehen für George Floyd auf die Straße.
De George Floyd, un ciudadano negro a manos de un policía blanco.
An investigation is underway in Minneapolis into the death of another black man in police custody.
This was a moment that we could not turn away from. Yeah, just like devastating. It's devastating. With the additional uncertainty of the pandemic, it was just a sense of absolute helplessness. We're all in our homes. Our window into the world is our phones or our screens.
Of course, we all want to live in a world where everybody's life feels sacred and feels valued, but a huge part of that and an undeniable step towards that is for Black Lives to Matter. I think I've watched the beginning of the clip many times. I've never finished it. Because for me, there was a barrier which I couldn't get over, which was I don't want to witness someone's life leave them.
I've seen quite a lot of films like that, like videos of something like that occurring. So I just thought, oh God, another one of those videos.
It was a familiar, horrified feeling.
You know, unfortunately for me, this is not the first video I've seen like this. been going on for too long, and it isn't just in our lifetime. It's been going on long before us. You know, this is a systemic problem. Racism isn't only going on in America. You know, the UK is not innocent.
The UK has a track record of state-sanctioned violence in police custody, which is even more insidious because it's all behind closed doors. There's no cameras in there. These cases aren't exclusive to the American experience.
It threw me back to like, raw, we still at the bottom of this thing. Okay, so when are we gonna change everything that makes this possible?
George Floyd is dead. The scene of the confrontation with police outside this grocery store is now home for a memorial. People throughout the city, throughout the state, expressing outrage over the actions of one officer and the inactions of others.
They treated my brother like a scumbag. They left him there to die. They act like he was a piece of trash.
Later that afternoon, I headed to City Hall. I just don't have a lot of hope and faith in the system. Chief Arredondo was going to make a decision of whether he was going to fire one or more of the officers. All right, we're live. We're in front of City Hall right now. I don't know about y'all, but I couldn't go back to sleep last night. Yeah. After I saw that video, I felt absolutely sick to my stomach. Chief Arredondo is about to do a press conference, and we want them to take action, and we want them to do something now.
As chief of police, I do not have a say in criminal charges against employees. We do not investigate our own in matters like that. But what I am responsible for is their employment.
I've been obviously up all night in reviewing the information that I have to make the decision that I'm standing before you today with many of the community leaders behind me. Before involved former employees, I've made that decision this afternoon.
He made the announcement, which was unprecedented, that he was planning to fire all 4 of the police officers involved.
It was something that the department had never experienced before. Some officers, I'm sure, were devastated. These officers have family members. They have loved ones. But I also have to look at the victims. We all have to be held accountable.
This is still an ongoing criminal matter that the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension is investigating, as well as our FBI.
I'm glad that Chief Arredondo has taken a stand. I'm also calling the Minneapolis Police Department to charge those officers. Making sure that those officers weren't just fired, but that they were criminally charged. That became our focus later that afternoon when we held the first demonstration.
We want this police officer arrested with his partner, not suspended, not fined. So let's go to the police station and make sure he get arrested.
Right on, that's right.
People who are here for the protest have actually joined a march towards the Minneapolis Police Department. The officers involved in that incident, they worked at 3rd Precinct. The Black Lives Matter movement began long before George Floyd was killed. In 2012, we had started to organize after the killing of Trayvon Martin at the hands of George Zimmerman.
Verdict, we the jury find George Zimmerman not guilty.
We wound up holding some protests, but there wasn't a movement until the police killing of Mike Brown.
Police officer shot and killed an unarmed 18-year-old Michael Brown. Police say the officer had been on the force for about 6 years.
Folks from around the country actually descended upon Ferguson.
Don't shoot! Hands up! Don't shoot! Hands up! Don't shoot!
That is what I would say really started what we know as the movement for Black Lives. And now the murder of George Floyd would not be swept under the rug.
No justice, no peace.
We decided to march to the 3rd Precinct.
By Wednesday morning, the site of the 3rd Precinct had become a focal point. If you're ever experiencing civil unrest, in your ear, there's this crescendo that's building. By Wednesday, it had reached a fever pitch.
MPD is responding extremely aggressively. You guys see them on the rooftop like snipers. It looks like a war zone. I'm so serious.
I knew that any small mistake could be deadly.
The protest was largely peaceful at that time, but suddenly the police emerged wearing riot gear, using tear gas on protesters. I thought I was gonna vomit. I literally couldn't breathe. They're worried about rocks being thrown at a building when we're worried about human lives being taken away without any accountability.
Sleeping much? No. You don't have the luxury of time. Mistakes are going to be made. I did direct our officers to deploy gas once a secure fence was breached. You're doing the best you can, but it was a crisis that I had never, ever experienced before. The crowd's amassed, and they made their way in there. Within minutes, the first flames started to come from inside the building.
Wow, that's the precinct.
And I told dispatch that we've lost the 3rd precinct.
This is the community's response to George Floyd being murdered by the Minneapolis police.
Police have largely withdrawn, and it's pretty much lawlessness right now across large parts of the city.
Donald Trump initially called the video of Mr. Floyd's death shocking, but went on Twitter to describe the protesters as thugs, adding that when the looting starts, the shooting starts.
Are you concerned that you might be stoking more racial violence or more...
No, not at all. MAGA loves the black people. Minnesota, they've got to get tougher.
The situation is incredibly dangerous. Minnesota National Guard is deployed. This is the largest civilian deployment in Minnesota history. The force that we have out there now is about 3 times larger than the one in the 60s, which was the largest during the race riots.
I'm here to announce that former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin is in custody.
But the question is whether that will be enough to quell the rage that was ignited here and is now spreading across the country.
This trauma being expressed right now is a result of years and years of racial injustice and discrimination.
Martin Luther King, he says, a riot is the language of the unheard. I think that Black people were feeling that there was very little that they could do to challenge injustices within the system until the Black Lives Matter movement began.
Thousands of people have gathered across central London to protest against the killing of George Floyd in the biggest gathering of people since lockdown.
Am I next? That is the question I'm asking myself. Regardless if I'm here in the United Kingdom, am I next because of my skin color? Black life matters.
The George Floyd protests started on the streets of Minneapolis on Wednesday. By Sunday, they were with us here in Trafalgar Square. This level of engagement, is it about solidarity with fellow citizens in America, or is it about change here?
I don't think it's either or. There are parallels, there are significant parallels, disturbing parallels between the Black British experience and the African American experience. There was a young man that I was in primary school with. His name's Julian Cole. He was accosted by 5 officers outside of a nightclub, had his neck snapped. Guess how many convictions that debacle ended in? None. There's been no jail time doled out for police.
But you're not putting America and Britain on the same footing. I mean, I heard that very moving, horrific account, but our police aren't armed, they don't have guns. It's not the same, is it?
If it's not the same, then you have to explain to me why Julian Cole is not an exception. Black people are twice as likely to die in police custody as their white counterparts in this country. So this is very real. The need for change is overdue. And I hope this is a learning point for many people who think along the lines that you just expressed.
At the time George Floyd happened, I've had politicians say to me, why are you worried? You know, it's not British policing. But I know, because I've been in policing for a very long time, that things like that happen in this country too. That is the reality, and it's very much the real experience of the black community.
Julian happened to be my friend. And when I heard about George Floyd's murder, yeah, I immediately thought about Julian, because it was all to do with the throat. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. I used to work with Julian in a shoe shop back in like 2013, and we were cool. Played football for the FC semi-pro, and he was a sports science student. He was a good youth with good fortune. So when I found out about his case, yeah, I was shocked still. I was like, what? What do you mean? His neck's broken. What do you like?
Julian Cole's arrest was captured on CCTV. He'd been restrained outside a nightclub in Bedford, and bouncers and the police were involved. Officers dragged him into a van. The officers sacked today had all lied that he'd been able to move his legs. He was initially taken to a police station rather than a hospital. And this is how he is now. He's in a permanent vegetative state.
I'm not afraid to say, feds literally broke my brethren's neck, then lied on one of their statements. It's too much. You know what I'm saying? It was too much, bro. In a situation like this, you shouldn't be abusing your power. And what's happened to you is that you've lost your job. I don't think that's enough. You would think that if you broke somebody's neck, you would be at the mercy of the law. Any of us go outside and do that right now to somebody, we are spending the rest of our lives in jail.
What the misconduct panel have found is that the officers acted without the honesty and integrity that I would expect them to, and nor did they conduct the welfare checks that I would have wanted them to.
Cases such as Julian Cole challenged that notion that justice in the United Kingdom treats everybody fairly, no matter what the colour of their skin.
They're searching my car for drugs, even though I told them what I do. They checked me and they're not found anything. I don't get stopped once a week. You detain me because of what? Because of perception? Because you perceive me to be something I'm not?
There's also a series of stories where police brutality had been alleged. Cases like the Dalian Atkinson killing.
Police were called to his father's home. A taser was discharged and Dalian Atkinson was restrained. He died shortly afterwards.
The cop kicks him in the head so hard, there's an imprint of his boot on Dalian Atkinson's head.
A lot of black people can relate to George Floyd having the life squeezed out of him. Not many of us can relate to the sharp end of the violence, but I think most of us can relate to being looked at with suspicion, being looked at like you're a threat, being chased out of establishments, being asked to move on. Police, prisons, these are institutions that exacerbate inequality, institutions that have pinpointed and terrorized us, you know.
What's his name? George Floyd! What's his name? George Floyd! What's his name?
In Minneapolis, the demonstrations continue. Calls are growing for the 3 other officers involved to also be brought to justice.
I am your president of law and order. If a city or state refuses to take the actions that are necessary to defend the life and property of their residents, then I will deploy the United States military and quickly solve the problem for them. We must never give in to anger or hatred. If malice or violence reigns, then none of us is free.
Go to the Instagram pages of some of your favorite celebrities and you'll see nothing but a black box where a photo or video should be.
Major corporations have flooded social media with messages for the Black Lives Matter cause.
Quite quickly started to become the social media event. Something to jump on. Like, oh my God, this is awful. Tell me about how awful this is for you. I didn't really think I could explain it in a text message.
A recent update for Google Assistant now has a custom answer to the question, do Black Lives Matter?
Black people deserve the same freedoms afforded to everyone in this country, and recognizing the injustice they face is the first step towards fixing it.
If you are here for the protest, make your way towards Hyde Park Lane.
Arriving at that protest, you know, as someone who has the dichotomy of both experiencing racism but also having privilege because of my skin tone and proximity to whiteness, I felt like I had to show up. I guess I didn't know what to expect, but your pain had a place to be expressed.
No justice! No justice!
Once I had that megaphone, it was like, right, this is the job. And protesting was like a job that I took seriously.
Pick up yourselves for representing the black team today.
It was one of the most magical days because it was a huge turnout. It just felt like the whole park was covered with people. And this sense of the fact that we are all coming from the same place and we all want the same thing.
I'm not just scared because black people die every fucking day, but I'm scared because of the first time you lot listed. This is not the first time you've been listed.
There was this energy, like we were just there, listening to each other, and that kind of felt cathartic.
I want to thank every single one of you for coming out. This is very important. This is very vital.
Suddenly, this sort of energy in the crowd like kind of changed, and I could suddenly hear this voice.
Black lives have always mattered. We have always been important.
It was John Boyega.
Every black person understands and realizes the first time you are reminded that you were black. You remember?
I could cut the air with a knife, like it was powerful.
I need you to understand how painful this shit is. I need you to understand how painful it is. Guys. To be reminded every day that your race means nothing. And that isn't the case anymore. That is never the case anymore. We're going to try today. We are a physical representation of our support for George Floyd. We are a physical representation of our support for Trayvon Martin. I'm speaking to you from my heart. Look, I don't know if I'm going to have a career after this. Fuck that. But no, fuck that, blood.
So grateful to him. His speech went a long way. Black boy from Beckham, and he's using his power and his influence in a way that's really going to benefit people.
Star Wars actor John Boyega is joining the call for racial equality after George Floyd's death.
I just think it's really cool that John Boyega, star of Star Wars, went out and spoke. I just think this is super powerful.
My guy is shelling, and I love the fact that he's shelling and he's creating waves.
There's not really as much racism or violence as there used to be, so there's no reasons to protest anymore. So they have to kind of make things up and exaggerate and blame things on racism, even though racism wasn't proven to be involved yet.
So I remember my editor gave me a call. There was a gathering for George Floyd in Hyde Park. The speakers encourage people, let's keep making noise, let's walk towards central London. Forget about COVID.
There are not supposed to be any gatherings happening anywhere in the country right now. And there are thousands and thousands of people, young people, who are here today.
What I noticed is groups of police officers on the sides sort of following the march. So some people will start interacting with the police.
There has always been a sense of black people versus the police, or racialized people versus the police, and how the police deal with those communities. So when I see the police, I feel threatened, I don't feel safe. I do believe that their presence there is aggressive.
Those protests were essentially about police brutality. The BLM protests had a real impact on policing at the time. And I know that because I was in all of the meetings when that was discussed. I was one of National Police Chiefs Council's 52 chief constables. So Chiefs Council that I sat on, lots of people sitting around, at least a third of that council going, this is terrible, we've got to do something about it. A third didn't speak, but I strongly suspect wanted to do something, but were nervous of the political reaction. The political context at the time from the Conservative Party was, there's a culture war here and there's nothing to see here.
Police chiefs in the UK offered a message of solidarity to the protesters, saying they too were appalled and horrified by Mr. Floyd's death. But that didn't go down well here.
The police in the UK have killed people and are held unaccountable for. Look at the T-shirt.
These are the names of people they've killed. How dare the chief of police across the country issue a statement saying they're in solidarity with George Floyd? They are disgraceful. They have never been accountable in this country. How dare they use his death as a publicity stunt? We're out here for people in this country that have been killed, and we will fight for our rights. Shame on you! Shame on you! We want justice! It's our justice!
It was very tense, very, very tense. It was just total chaos.
Do you understand why people in this country feel that there is enough of a parallel to come out and protest here in the streets like we saw yesterday?
I understand people are feeling very strongly about what has happened over there, but I would draw a distinction, actually, between the United States with its history, its culture, its policing models, and ours.
I think that George Floyd's murder brought people out on the streets, but I think this racialized state violence, it keeps happening because it's the norm, and we don't want this norm anymore. That's why people came out on the streets, because they were like, we don't like this norm. This norm is wrong. This norm is perverse. Just because it's the norm doesn't mean that it's okay.
Breaking news overseas, a major protest underway right now in London. A protest in London. What's going on? What we're seeing here feels uniquely American. I guess it's not.
Well, it isn't anymore, Steph, because what you're seeing is those same protests being mirrored around the world. People both inspired and outraged. This is just one example of the protests that are happening now and building around the world, from Australia
Whose lives matter? Black lives matter!
To Paris yesterday, where 20,000 people protested.
Meanwhile, back here in the U.S., 3 other officers have been charged with aiding and abetting second-degree murder.
Protests in the UK feel like they're gathering momentum. Strength of feeling hasn't yet diminished, and those wanting to add their voice is growing.
I'd been seeing it build, and it's so interesting because it was like building on WhatsApp and stuff. It was very, very community level. In the same way that aunties will send you chain prayers. Do you get me? It was coming in like that. And then you get this sense of, I know the community's gonna really step out for this. You just kind of feel it, you know what I mean? You feel it, like maybe that thread gets tugged a little bit and everyone's like very community ready. It felt like we were focused. We can't get to where we want to be if we don't do this right now.
It has been a day of mass demonstrations across the UK. Thousands took to the streets in cities across the country to make their voice heard, chanting, Black Lives Matter.
Black lives matter! Black lives matter! Black lives matter!
senseless violence, don't cap.
We kneel together at 8 minutes 46 seconds. That's the time it took for George Floyd to die.
Earlier in 2020, where I'd put out my blog, I wrote this song for Julian.
Frustrated. Look at how they got us in papers. Black boy, black hood, black trainers, judging the cover of that book.
It came from a place of controlled rage. I was looking for a way to be able to say I'm frustrated without actually losing my composure. Around that same time, we started seeing like videos of people like playing my block at the protests. No excuse, freedom cost, took the risk. I was grateful. It actually is used for the thing that you want it to be used for, which is help amplify the voices of people who can't do it for themselves. We'd managed to make Julian Cole's situation grab some traffic on the internet. This now has had an effect beyond me. The movement. This isn't gonna go away.
Thinking about that video of George Floyd and that experience, there were moments in that period of time where I would just sit and hysterically sob, just acknowledging that things were just shit and had been shit growing up, and what the murder of George Floyd brought out, particularly when I look at kind of around here, the things that my friends and my family were saying in my local community. You're seeing Facebook posts of, you know, if black people didn't steal and loot, then maybe they wouldn't have a problem, and these are people who were like some of my closest friends growing up, and it was a really pivotal moment for me. I was starting to acknowledge that I am a black woman. Where's the one of me and Jake? Mum was born and raised in the Forest of Dean. My dad is West African, Senegalese. Looking at these as a complete flashback to kind of growing up. My parents separated when I was quite young, so I grew up with my mum and my grandparents in Gloucestershire.
The school ones?
I know, I mean, yeah, they're lovely photos, they're really cute, but yeah.
So is there stuff about school that I don't maybe know about?
This is my old secondary school leaver shirt. It's from kind of old friends, people I went to school with. Right across the front of that shirt says nigger, that someone's written. You've got I love you always, Nigs. That was, yeah, my nickname in secondary school. It started off with my nickname being nigger and then shortened to Nigs in kind of an endearing term. You've got good luck, my favourite nig. Nig-nog gollywog, give a coon a bone. This black bitch just stole my phone. Yeah.
Are you okay?
Yeah, no, I'm fine. These are all people that, like, I considered some of my closest friends that I spent every single day of my life with, and there's a real sadness that that was my reality for so long. For a group of 16-year-olds, for this to be the product of, like, us celebrating leaving school, I don't know how you can argue that we don't have an issue with racism in the UK looking at that. The area I live in, the context in which I grew up in, the only thing that was acceptable was to be white. That's the norm, that's what the world here looks like. I just wanted to be normal, and being white, God, I'm gonna go now. Being white was the only thing that was normal or okay, and I wasn't that, so it was kind of, how do I find my place in this world? I just didn't want to be black growing up. That's how I spent my whole life, you know? The murder of George Floyd
felt like a really powerful moment, knowing that if it didn't happen in this moment, your life carries on as it was.
Racism is happening all around us. Take a stand. If you are white and you're listening to this right now, this is your problem too.
The way it was being reported was very, very different. Like, basically, white people were shocked, and they'd not really been shocked by these events previously, and this has happened so many times. But this particular time, everybody, because everybody was still and didn't look away, it changed the way the air felt. Even when you went outside, like, everything felt like electric. The whole world was in pain about this one man and his horrible murder.
On the morning of the protest in Bristol, I wake up with this, like, urgency and this sort of fire. It's like, I need to be there. I don't think I ever actually watched the video, the murder of George Floyd, but the thing that was being talked about a lot was the fact he was asking for his mum. Doesn't matter, like, race doesn't matter in that situation, does it? That's just a human being murdered by another human.
I actually don't know what was going on for the average white person in that moment. But I think every decent human that sees that video is gonna feel something and want to respond. There was an outpouring of solidarity, right? And there was also a recognition and a response to the fact that the UK is not innocent.
Anybody that was in the streets, they were carrying placards. There was a placard that said, "Colston must fall."
The significance of this statue is here of Colston largely responds for a lot of the slave trade through Bristol. So they're just blocking it off right now.
There wasn't a single person of colour in my school. And, you know, my mum, I would never have called her racist, but her partner, my stepdad, he wouldn't shy away from saying the N-word. And so, after the murder of George Floyd, I suddenly felt like I'd been blind. And I think that's the awakening. It's like the blindfold coming off. But the main thing that was capturing my attention was Bristol's history with the transatlantic slave trade. To have in the city centre, the Colston statue, this awful slave trader, a man who trafficked 85,000 African people, to have that man glorified in the city centre. It says he was the most virtuous and wise son of the city. I just got really passionate. I got really angry. This could still be existing now. So we get to the statue.
Edward Colston reviled for his part in the slave trade. There has been a growing campaign in recent years to remove Colston's name from buildings across the city.
There's nothing quite like being in a crowd feeling the same. And I did a bit of rigging. I've got a rope in my bag. We didn't need to communicate what was going to happen. And I remember just having an anger and passion about the removal of this abhorrent man. It was this Saddam statue-esque moment, this cathartic moment. To see young black men climbing up on top of that plinth where this slave trader had once stood felt like poetic justice.
That statue represents years of oppression. It represents years of hurt and just a lot of hatred that has been built up inside of us. We've internalized for years. And that coming down today, hopefully signifies change.
the Colston statue. I thought, good for them. You know, we know how he made his money.
So I first heard about the Colston statue live on social media, and my instant reaction was, this is quite embarrassing. I saw, to me, what looked like quite middle-class white people essentially engaging in an act of vandalism in the name of helping Black people that they perceive of as victims. But I actually think it makes it harder to win over potentially sympathetic majorities to your cause.
Cast in bronze, now daubed with graffiti, one of Bristol's most famous sons. This had begun as a Black Lives Matter demonstration.
Removing statues and airbrushing out history. Totalitarian regimes do that.
I just think that everything should be taken down.
So how many statues are we going to destroy? How many buildings do we deface to make things fit a narrative?
No, but how can you address the systemic racism when you have a giant statue honouring them?
But not that way. It was just crazy.
So at the time, you have Nigel Farage arguing about BLM being a Marxist movement.
Black Lives Matter is a far-left Marxist organisation whose chief aim is to defund and close down police forces so that we would live under anarchy.
Oh, you're full of such utter nonsense.
Talk shows, radio shows, Jeremy Vine, all sorts going back and forth about the merits or not of something like Black Lives Matter.
If you say you don't condone criminal damage, why are you then justifying it and saying, but criminal damage is okay, provided you feel strongly enough about the issue? Because that's exactly what you're saying.
That's exactly what I'm not saying. And if you'd heard me, Carol, what I said every single time was, I do not condone violence.
This was a turning point at which suddenly a statue changes people's minds to think it's not civilized behaviour. That's enough.
You can't erase history, and you haven't solved anything.
So what are they going to do? Take the pyramids and Cleopatra's Needle down? The Colosseum?
It actually became, I think, one of the most divisive moments of that summer.
The history of the British Empire has been brought into focus. This was sprayed next to the statue of Winston Churchill. To many, he's a hero, but he is a controversial figure.
I will not support or indulge those who break the law or attack the police or desecrate public monuments. And so I must say clearly that those who attack public property or the police, who injure the police officers who are trying to keep us all safe, those people will face the full force of the law.
This hooliganism is utterly indefensible. There is no justification for attempting to disrespect the cenotaph or vandalising the statue of Winston Churchill.
Does the Home Secretary recognise that there's structural inequality, discrimination and racism in our country? Does the Home Secretary recognise that people want to see action from this government?
Denise emails, if a slogan about lives mattering is needed, then surely all lives matter is the only one acceptable to all.
Of course, all lives matter, like, point out the obvious. But we're here to talk about lives that are historically harmed and lost.
All Lives Matter is a slogan used malevolently by the far right to undermine racial justice movements.
All lives should matter, not just black lives.
Yeah, exactly.
They were waiting for an opportunity, and defacing Churchill, well, you know, all bets are off now.
Why are they coming? Why are they coming antagonising us? They're antagonising. No, not everybody. Fuck off.
This was the direct backlash. The energy being thrown back the other way.
Burnley Football Club spoke out against the flying of a White Lives Matter banner at their match against Manchester City yesterday.
White Lives Matter is being used as turning this into white v black.
I think that the pandemic was a really significant factor. And that pandemic confinement, the fabric of society has changed completely, right, because of the lockdown regulations. People are trying to make sense of it. People are scared by it. People are angry about it.
The police are weak. Boris Johnson doesn't give a shit. But this is our country. We will not stand by and watch our monuments and memorials be vandalised.
At the same time, I don't think progressives were great at responding to some of those feelings and some of those worries and some of that anger. And I think that that left a lot of space open for the right to capitalise.
Oh, man, I'm just watching it and I'm getting so fucking angry. Just thinking, how the fuck can you let that happen in our capital city? BLM, you've done more to break down race fucking integration in this country than anyone's tried to do. Much more than the National Front ever done. Look what you've done. Look what you're doing. The divide that you're about to create in this country is fucking going to be unrecognisable. And you've done it. Anyway, next Saturday, I'll see you all in London.
What were you planning on doing?
Marching up to London. Stop anyone attacking any statues.
That weekend, the word went around, which was don't go out. And so a lot of people didn't go out, including myself. I didn't protest that day.
Well, it's going to be trouble, isn't there, between black and white people?
Travelling on the underground.
Boys, get it up, boy.
People were just there, staring at one another.
You know what, you've had your 5 minutes in the train, now fuck off, get out of the train.
Popular now, though, isn't it? It's popular now! This is my home, you're all going back!
You could just feel the tension. One of my friends sent me the rant from Tommy Robinson. Tommy Robinson was going to start a counter-protest with the EDL, English Defence League. We just knew, my friends and I, that we needed to be there.
Listen, lads, we don't want to be in the paper like we're fucking Nazis.
There were going to be young men from the community going down there to face the far right, and it wasn't going to be pretty.
At a time when the whole world is standing up against racism, if we're not going to protest because racists are turning up, it sets a bad precedent.
We just felt we could help to diffuse some of it, you know?
Well, this is the scene live right now.
What we know is that this is a coalition, really, far-right groups like Britain First and also the Football Lads Alliance.
Well, let's go to some live pictures now of Trafalgar Square.
I just knew it wasn't going to end well, and I just wanted black people to stay as far away from all of that as possible.
The atmosphere here has turned suddenly toxic.
In Trafalgar Square, we see the far-right guys throwing bottles, racially abusing BLM protesters.
Look at him, he's calling us monkeys right there.
What appeared to be a small group of far-right sympathisers broke through into Trafalgar Square.
There were skirmishes happening, clashes, fights, things escalating and getting out of hand. And then what happened was the police sort of chaperoned everybody over towards Waterloo Station.
This is actually Black Lives Matter that's causing this. It's Antifa, the fascists, the anti-fascists. And they're the reason why people are here today.
And we are getting reports now that there have been several clashes at Waterloo Station.
The EDL far-right guys, they run off and they leave one guy. He looks concussed and he's sort of staggering around. Some BLM supporters start to descend on him. My friends and I, we rushed over there. I wasn't just going to stand and watch it unfold. You know, I had the power to do something about it right there and then, and I did.
Amid so many ugly images, so much hatred and so much division, there was one that offered hope.
2 hours afterwards, a message from my sister said, "Bruv, is this you?" And she said, "It's going viral." That's when I realised this is a big story. So I said to her, like, don't tell Mum. I didn't expect to get caught on camera, full stop, you know. I mean, I guess I should have known better, but I didn't expect it to go viral, not globally anyway.
When I saw the photo, in that moment, my man said, look, I'm gonna treat this man like a human because that's how I want to be treated. See this guy's injured, let me help him out. That humanity, I think, is the core note at the heart of everything that happened. And that's what makes it a symbolic image.
Living in rural Britain, you experience a lot of racism, and we don't talk about diversity, we don't talk about difference, but now that was happening. I felt really inspired by that. It gave me a bit of hope that I have moved through my life not being vocal enough, and here's an opportunity for me to do so, and I can do it somewhere where nobody ever talks about these things. So I texted my friend Lenny, shall we do a protest in the forest? And she was like, oh my God, yes. So yeah, it started off from a text. So we called the town clerk, and then I think within like an hour or so, we were given the go-ahead to run a demonstration from Bathurst Park. And we were like, right, what's next on our list? And we kind of went through all these things we need to do, and we were like, great, we make a Facebook group next. Like, we start advertising. We'll just invite all of the people that we know, and it's, you know, people are going to think, great, this is brilliant, like, let's get on board. And people started sharing it, and, you know, we got quite a lot of traction quite quickly on the Facebook group. And we were like, God, like, this is going well. Forest 15, Black Lives Matter demonstration. But then there is a problem, because it started quite public outrage. A petition had been created trying to oppose the demonstration going ahead for their concerns around COVID. And then the council sent us a letter, and they'd made the decision to cancel the event. I feel I can speak for all of the council and the overwhelming majority of Lydney residents to say that we all support the underlying aims of the Black Lives Matter campaign, and therefore indeed the wider sense that all lives matter. I'm calling on the organisers to show due respect for Lydney, and that indeed all lives matter, to cancel or at least postpone your event as it demonstrates respect for all lives. So yeah, I think we just put a post up that said, this event is now cancelled, please see the letter attached below. And within about an hour of posting it, someone from The Guardian reached out.
The council had been backing the celebration, and then the sentiment changed, and one councillor, I think, resigned in protest. And it's a real microcosm in some ways of what was unfolding in the rest of Britain. One side very impassioned, and the other feeling threatened by it.
I think we must have spoken to The Guardian that evening, and then it was picked up by the BBC, our top story tonight. And I was just like, oh my God.
Welcome to BBC Points West on this Friday evening. Our main story tonight, the town divided over Black Lives Matter.
You know, racism is not something that is recognised in this area.
You shouldn't go around accusing people that don't agree with you of being racist.
Yeah, I mean, it's a poor choice of words at best. It's offensive at worst. It speaks to how much of a problem this is in the area that I live in, because that's your councillors that have said that all lives matter 3 times in a letter.
If you're going to underline 3 times all lives matter, which is a statement that's used by the far right, you've already aligned yourself not on the side of racial justice.
The council said the event was causing anxiety among residents, but the organisers believe the rejection has racial overtones.
It was just everywhere, and I think, you know, as soon as a news outlet posted something on their Twitter and their website, I was getting a kind of barrage of abuse, comments over racial slurs, threatening to follow me home, or that they wanted to kill me. There was websites that were set up at that point that still exist now that are like haddyguysacunt.com. So these are from the haddyguysacunt.com website. As atonement for the slave trade, we should take immediate steps to make things right for those who don't feel welcome. We can start by selling this cunt back to the Africans, a sort of reverse slave trade, if you will. Someone else has said, I would fuck it as long as she called me master while I was banging away, then drop it off in deepest, darkest Africa.
I just don't, I can't get my head around it. And I mean, I suppose, in a sense, that it's so awful that you kind of almost block it out.
Which I do understand, but I think the privilege you get to turn away from it that I don't get. I will never not be black. And I think...
I know, because I know part of who I am is I'm not very good at challenging. Because you remember you said to me, you need to do better, Mum.
Sounds so brutal when you put it like
but
that.
it was tough. It was tough.
Yeah.
I was really shocked when you said it to me.
It was really tough, and I was in a really dark place, I think, at that moment in time. But I think the council, they did face a lot of backlash for that letter. They had a vote, and they voted to change their decision, and the protest was allowed to go ahead. You know, people were accusing the councillor, the mayor, councillors of being racist, and that isn't a good look for a local council. So I think a lot of their change of heart was around the optics. On the day of the protest, just seeing the number of people was so supportive, and I think really acknowledging how serious this problem is. It was an incredible experience.
It says only white people can fix racism. My color is not my problem.
Like, the racist abuse and the threats has been difficult, but I think for us it's become so much more than we ever thought it would be. It was something we were passionate about before, but I think now it's something that means 10 times more to us.
Hello? Black lives matter! Black lives.
Just being there in that moment and watching that all play out. It's one of my proudest moments. Yeah, it made everything feel worth it.
During that time, in the middle of summer of 2020, the protests dwindled and they got smaller, but the energy was still there. The energy was the same. And it just felt like people were changing and their opinions were changing.
By the time it got to the end of June, July, everyone started to refer to activism as like this new thing now that we're all going to be a part of. We're all going to be activists in some way or another.
We asked him why you're wearing it. You're not dressed for
Because I wear anything I want, man. I wear anything I want. What's wrong with you?
You're not dressed for the climate, so it's very...
What do you mean the climate?
After the murder of George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter protest, any incident involving the Met and people of colour, they were becoming viral incidents.
The other police officer asked me where I live, where I was going. That's also none of your business.
Yeah,
it's none of your... Do you understand that?
They were becoming issues of public confidence, and there was a different level of media interest in it as well. For instance, the stop and search of Bianca Williams and Ricardo dos Santos.
I'm at home, bro. I'm at home, bro.
This is the moment that British sprinter Bianca Williams, her partner and 3-month-old baby were stopped and searched by police.
He's just been detained for a search. Don't worry, touch me, my son. Okay, madam, calm down. We're going to look after your son. It's okay. Okay, get down. We'll look after your son for you.
Black people are twice as likely to die in restraint-related instances as white people, and black people are 3 times as likely to be arrested as white people.
And I know all of those statistics, and they are horrific. And that is the exemplar of policing, over-policing and under-protecting minority communities. And it's so well known, I think it's actually quite difficult for anyone to argue that disproportionality, over-representation in the criminal justice system is not an absolute fact in this country.
Detained in a Section 1 of place for a search for weapons.
We're both professional athletes, bro.
Like one then.
Huh?
Act like one then.
I don't need to act for what reason?
You're saying the section 1 of PACE, okay, which is search for weapons.
For what reason? I did not act suspicious.
Policing in this country definitely has a problem policing both black and Asian ethnic minority communities when the vast majority of the police force is white, the majority of it is male. It has a lack of understanding and empathy with the issue of race.
Speaking yesterday, Mr Johnson said that as a leader, he could not sit back and ignore what was going on. The British Prime Minister acknowledged that much more needed to be done to tackle the issue.
My job at the time was just to find a way to help the government to respond. The discussions with the Prime Minister were mainly focused on how do we respond, and the Prime Minister's concerns around the strength of feeling amongst the public, particularly the black population, and he is wondering what he as Prime Minister could or should be doing.
Boris Johnson's announced that a commission will be established to examine all aspects of inequality in the UK.
We have to look at discrimination in the education system, in the criminal justice system. We have to look at all ways in which it affects black and minority ethnic groups. A new cross-governmental commission to look at what is going on. And what I really want to do as Prime Minister is change the narrative. So we stop the sense of victimisation and discrimination. We stop the discrimination. We stamp out racism.
You know, I'm in this building and people have very strong views on race relations, institutional racism, the use of the term, very strong views. They think, you know, the race relations industry has gone too far and there's overreach and, you know, they don't speak for the majority, etc. I have a slightly different view because I feel like I don't have to agree with everybody that I serve. And so my feeling was it makes a lot of sense to take stock. Let's see what the evidence says. So as myself, Munira Mirza, they head up the policy unit at the time, and Kemi Badenoch, a junior minister. The three of us were responsible for trying to put together this commission. And then the chair is, appointment of the chair was where things were maybe slightly more challenging for me. My view was we needed somebody that would be willing to follow the evidence. But for my other two colleagues, there was only one option, and that was Tony.
Dr. Tony Sewell. He has previously rejected evidence of institutional racism in schools as flimsy and has said that black boys were being held back because of what he called their over-feminised upbringing.
Well, it's very clear. I said, Tony's a good guy, but he shouldn't be a chair because of the things he said in the past.
Do you think you were hired to do this job to confirm the views that already exist in number 10?
There's a kind of perception out there that this report is going to be some kind of right-wing whitewash around race. You know, there are issues around crime and policing, but on the whole, the picture is, for those areas, is one of improvement.
But my other colleagues, their worry was the chair that was going to, for example, conclude that the UK is institutionally racist. Would that be palatable for them or even for the administration?
I really wanted us to have a fresh start. Commissioners who haven't done this sort of review before, there must be no jumping to conclusions, and I think that that's absolutely what we're going to get.
For me, it was very important that I had nothing to do with whatever happened next.
The Prime Minister's senior advisor on ethnic minorities, Samuel Kasumu, is to stand down. News of his departure comes the day after the publication of a government-commissioned report on race that has been heavily criticised by campaigners.
After all the calls for Black Lives to matter, the answer came that all the accounts we've heard of discrimination do not tell the tale of a racist country. That there is no proof of institutional racism in the UK. It points to social class, geography and family setup as more important factors in life than race, arguing that the UK should be held up as a model for other white majority countries.
This distinguished group was tasked with reviewing inequality in the UK, and they focused on education, employment, crime and policing, and health. The report does not deny that institutional racism exists in the UK. Rather, the report did not find conclusive evidence of it in the specific areas it examined.
I'm a big defender of the Sewell report. I think people will say that the government was trying to put forward their own agenda. No, I think actually the government was attempting to find the real answers to the problems that were being raised.
I mean, what I can say is that we don't need a commission or a review to tell us that suspicion of stop and search should be repealed. They're just letting the government get away with looking like the government is doing something and taking you seriously without actually doing anything.
The report came out around the time of April Fool's.
Morning, guys.
Morning. Morning, my slime.
How's the race report going?
Yeah, good. We've been having a bit of a brainstorm.
You know, if you have to do a race report, it means there's a problem with race. If you have to commission a report.
And we've decided to be more inclusive by renaming Big Ben Tall Tunde. April Fools!
You try and create laughter so that the real pain, the actual bitterness of the issue, you're sort of shielded against it.
No, but we've done the report and we found that there is no evidence for institutional racism in Britain.
April Fools!
Yeah, that one is true. Yeah, that is.
What? It truly felt like an April Fool's joke. You know, it's a huge slap in the face of everyone who has had, you know, real life-defining racism in their life here in Britain to be told it doesn't exist.
Once again, the eyes of the world are on Minneapolis. The city braced for the trial of the former police officer accused of murdering George Floyd. Tense in the knowledge this will be a defining moment for America.
Today starts a landmark trial that will be a referendum on equality and justice for all.
No justice,
no peace.
No justice,
no peace.
Almost a year after the world was shocked by the video of George Floyd's death, the police officer seen kneeling on his neck is standing trial in Minnesota's first trial to be televised live.
No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. No justice.
For many, this trial will be a defining moment for race relations in America. The outcome uncertain and the stakes high.
Shaven is in the courtroom. The family goes in this court seeking justice for all of us in America.
There was a lot of uncertainty whether or not a jury would see value in the life of George Floyd and would see criminal conduct at the hands of Derek Chauvin. There is no guarantee that because an officer kills someone, that it's caught on camera, that there are witnesses, that there will be justice and accountability.
Have you made a decision today whether you intend to testify or whether you intend to invoke your Fifth Amendment privilege?
I will invoke my Fifth Amendment privilege today.
The defendant has the right not to testify.
I just sat there and just stared at him. And I seen him with his knee on my nephew's neck. I seen my nephew begging for his life. And he's just sitting there. He's destroyed a lot of lives because of his act of aggression.
We plan to prove to you, beyond a reasonable doubt, that Mr. Chauvin was anything other than innocent.
It's a case that's going to be important to America and our discussion around systemic issues and around equal justice.
We're going to ask that you find him guilty of murder in the second degree, murder in the third degree, and second-degree manslaughter.
It was important in the opening statement.
You will hear him say, "Tell my kids I love them."
For the jurors to feel the humanity.
You will be able to hear Mr. Floyd saying, "Please, I can't breathe. Please, man, please."
And I figure not much needed to be said. You just see it for yourself.
Please, the name of it. I can't breathe here. You will hear Mr. Floyd as he's crying out. You'll hear his voice get heavier. You will hear his words further apart. You will see that his respiration gets shallower and shallower.
Well, you got him down, man. Let him breathe, at least, man.
I can breathe.
Those videos were critically important.
When the ambulance arrived, he was not responsive, and the defendant had to know what was right beneath him.
And when you see it, just sort of that feeling that you get, that understanding that something terribly wrong is happening, that was something that we wanted to get out right away.
George Floyd begged until he could speak no more, and the defendant continued.
And so we settled on the theme of believe your eyes.
This case is exactly what you thought when you saw it first. When you saw that video, it is exactly that. You can believe your eyes.
It was important the jury believed, because we knew that that was our best evidence. And it's very difficult to convict a police officer of wrongdoing. Think of the Rodney King case, an assault captured on video with an acquittal.
We, the jury, find the defendant not guilty of the crime of assault.
Because they were somehow able to convince this jury that they didn't need to believe their eyes. And we really wanted to make sure that that didn't happen here.
This wasn't policing. This was murder. The defendant is guilty of all 3 counts. All of them.
The defense was first trying to argue that this was a justified use of force.
I felt that Derek Chauvin was justified and was acting with objective reasonableness, following Minneapolis Police Department policy.
Derek Chauvin did exactly what he had been trained to do over the course of his 19-year career.
And that is why we wanted Chief Arredondo to be particularly compelling and brave.
Chief Arredondo, he had to make the decision on whether or not he in some ways broke that blue wall of silence.
When do you believe, or do you have a belief as to when this?
I felt that this was a moment. It has to be objectively reasonable, where there was a moral obligation to speak out, and so I did. Once Mr. Floyd had stopped resisting, and clearly when Mr. Floyd was no longer responsive to continue to apply that level of force that in no way, shape, or form is anything that is by policy, is not part of our training, and it is certainly not part of our ethics or our values. Mr. Floyd was pleading that one person wearing a uniform that day would come to his aid, and we failed him.
Prosecutors say Chauvin betrayed his badge when he used excessive force.
Because human behavior is unpredictable.
Chauvin's lawyers have argued that Floyd's death was really an overdose caused by the fentanyl found in his blood.
The toxicology, the fentanyl and methamphetamine, all of those combined to cause Mr. Floyd's death.
Did some of the drugs in his system have something to do with it? Did it play a role? Maybe, but certainly was not the actual cause of his death.
What today remains your opinion as to the cause of death?
That's cardiopulmonary arrest complicating law enforcement subdual restraint and neck compression.
With closing arguments all set today in the trial of former police officer Derek Chauvin.
The state has failed to prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt.
After they hear closing arguments, Jamie, what are the next steps for the jurors?
They will be sequestered. That means no contact with the outside world.
And how sweet it is to come out on a day where we may turn this country around with a guilty verdict.
When the verdict was going to be read.
All right, please be seated. Members of the jury, I understand you have a verdict.
I get into the courtroom and one of the family members was there. I just remember thinking to myself as I saw him, what in the world am I going to tell this person if the verdict comes back not guilty?
Members of the jury, I will now read the verdicts as they will appear in the permanent records of the 4th Judicial District. State of Minnesota plaintiff versus Derek Michael Chauvin, defendant. Verdict, count 1. Court file number 27, CR 20-12646. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 1, unintentional second-degree murder while committing a felony.
Find the defendant guilty. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 2, third-degree murder, perpetrating an eminently dangerous act, find the defendant guilty. Verdict count 3, second-degree manslaughter, culpable negligence, find the defendant guilty.
I cried, tears of joy and thankfulness. We were triumphant.
I feel vindicated, but I also feel emboldened because today the Black Lives Matter movement served notice on you. That going forward, if you take our lives, there will be consequences.
I didn't cry, I didn't holler, I didn't scream, I didn't do anything. I knew that that was just the right thing. So in my mind, okay, we can move on from this. You know, this is done. This part's done.
We knew that the verdict was not going to ever bring back George Floyd.
We're adjourned.
But it was a symbol of hope that we can fight back against an oppressive system and get some measure of justice.
I know people who have been killed by the police. I've never seen an officer get that much time.
It is a kind of relief and a releasing for all the people who didn't get to hear guilty.
And then, keeping with the George Floyd case.
In convicting PC Monk, the jury rejected his claim that he'd used reasonable force.
You see the conviction of a British cop.
Anything to say to the family, Mr. Monk?
For killing Dalian Atkinson, the former footballer. It felt like a huge moment.
Benjamin Monk's the first police officer convicted of manslaughter while on duty in England and Wales in 35 years.
In terms of what's shifted with the police in terms of race, police potentially understand themselves as being under far more scrutiny. But Dalian Atkinson, that verdict of manslaughter, it's a rare one.
2 officers concerned here, and one of those officers is now in prison.
And I think it can help to reinforce this sort of one bad apple perception of police violence, and therefore the norm is okay, when actually the norm of policing is the problem. It's not a few bad apples and simply locking up officers that get caught going too far. It's not going to stop it from happening again and again.
So the thing about policing is policing only ever changes when there's been a catastrophe. So after George Floyd, I went to Chiefs Council in December 2021 to say to them, you have got to use this moment to admit we are still institutionally racist, apologise for it, and then launch the plan saying you're going to do something about it. And in January, I was told that Chief Constables had voted against me, and that's when I decided to retire.
How is it possible, 4 or 5 years later, that not much has changed?
Or one possibility is that it doesn't matter enough to the people who can make it change.
They took a man's potential away from him, and that is nobody's fault but theirs. And the fact that no one was held accountable for it directly, I just don't think that's fair.
Everything always feels fragile.
And I think that was a moment, and there was a moment where we took charge of the narrative, and look how resentful people have been about it. Like, how dare they?
Yes.
How dare they say that they matter?
There's quite a lot of that, I feel, in the last few years. There's quite
Bit
a lot of,
eye-rolling.
Isn't this over? It's like, you tell me.
How does that make you feel?
Really pissed off.
Frustrated and exhausted.
And angry. It pisses me off. It makes me angry.
The backlash is about ideas and about an understanding of what norms we are expected to accept, you know? But the authoritarian lean towards attempting to shut down these conversations now, I just feel like you can't really put the feathers back into the pillowcase. At the end of the day, like, the minds have been changed. Backlashes don't erase legacies.
I think it's about recognizing how much that moment in time impacted so many people. But I think my personal experience is the severity of that level of racism has got significantly worse. I'd been out with some friends. I was approached by a man who I didn't know. It quite quickly moved into, you know, where are you from? Where are you really from? You know, black people will never be British. I think the phrase he used was, pigs that are born in stables don't grow up to be horses. And then, yeah, he came back 20 minutes later with a gun and a knife and pointed it in my face.
We've ended the tyranny of so-called diversity, equity, and inclusion policies, and our country will be woke no longer.
We have not ever been able to escape this notion that we go 3 steps and then we're pushed 10 steps backwards.
Stopped all government censorship and brought back free speech in America. It's back.
There is one person that President Trump should pardon from federal charges forthwith. That person is Derek Chauvin. Elon Musk commented on X, something to think about.
There will always be forces that will seek to diminish us and stifle us and keep us in our place. But resistance requires that we rise up. Any black person can put themselves in that situation and think, what if that had been me? What if that was my husband or my brother or my uncle or my father? And if this could happen to George Floyd under these circumstances over an alleged counterfeit $20 bill, it could happen to any of us under any range of circumstances. And if we don't stand up, speak up, and fight back, it could very well happen to us next.